Molly Robinson. Hi there, hold on, I'm going to put you out speaker. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right.
Okay, I would like to call the December 5th Board of Education organizational meeting to order. First order of business is to choose a chair for the proceedings of the organizational portion of the meeting. So we need somebody to conduct the meeting.
I move that Bruce Likely be chair for the organization meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a couple of quick announcements as we get going. First and foremost, we have Chris Straub, one of our new board members, with us via telephone. We're launching into the 21st century here. He couldn't be here today, so we're including him by phone. And I'd like to welcome both Chris and Glenn to the Board of Education. Secondly, I'd like to begin by recognizing Jose Martinez, who is a longstanding Wilton employee who's going to be retiring. He began his work with the Wilton Board. I have a small statement I'd like to read. He began his work with the Wilton Board of Education Public Schools in October 1995. He was hired as a custodian at the Miller Driscoll Complex and moved to Middlebrook in 1998. During his 18 years of loyal district service, Mr. Martinez was known for outstanding work ethic, his kind, gentle manner, and his willingness to help others. He demonstrated his caring ways, large and small, on a daily basis, but played a monumental role in the life of one sixth-grade child back in 2003, when the student began choking on a pretzel at lunch. Mr. Martinez quickly came to the student's rescue and successfully performed the Heimlich maneuver on him. Since then, Mr. Martinez has continued to keep a watchful eye on the students and staff of the Middlebrook School. He also happily assumed the responsibility of leading the newly hatched ducklings out of one of the inner courtyards through Middlebrook School and out the side door each August. Jose is a quiet, unassuming man with many talents and will be greatly missed. And in his honor, we are donating 2 books about one of Mr. Martinez's favorite subjects. I could say the Boston Red Sox, but it's the New York Yankees. These books will be housed at the Middlebrook Library so they may be enjoyed by students for years to come. And we thank Mr. Martinez for his service.
And the second book is at Middlebrook School.
It's already there?
Yes.
Being studied by some young student, I'm sure. We now move on to the election of officers. And for those of you who have not participated in this process, we need to elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. We do it by written ballot, and as soon as a majority vote is chosen, that person is elected. If we fail to reach a majority, then the tie is broken by the first selectman. So is there a motion to nominate a chairman?
I'll nominate Bruce Likely.
Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? All in favor?
Wait, don't we vote?
Oh, that's right.
You just said that.
I just said that.
Thought I
Well, it's
heard
going
it
to be kind
recently.
of weird if there's write-ins beyond that, but yeah. I believe Molly will count the votes.
Count carefully, Molly.
For my sins.
Ken can help you with numbers.
He's a numbers.
Chris, this is the one time in the Board of Education policies and procedures where our votes are written, so you're not going to be able to participate in this vote. But any other votes that we have tonight, you'll be able to participate in.
Thank you, Bruce.
Five for Mr. Likely.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We now move for nominations for vice chairman, and I would like to nominate Chris Finkelstein.
I'd like to second that.
Any other nominations? Shall we cast our votes? I gotta write that down.
And there are 5 for Ms. Finkelstein.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We now move on to the choosing of a secretary, and I'd like to nominate Laura Schwem.
I'll second that.
Any others? Shall we vote?
Five for Ms. Schwinn.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and congratulations. We now move on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? It includes appointing the council to the board, the medical advisor, designation of signatories, and authorization for the superintendent to attend our meetings.
Yes.
Motion to approve the consent agenda? Second? All in favor? Aye. We move on to the approval of the 2014 meeting date calendar. That is, I believe, on the website at this point, is it, Molly?
Yes.
Has everybody had a chance to see that? Motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor? I'm sorry, second? All in favor? Aye. Approval for the format of board agendas. That's in your package. Has anybody had any questions on that? It maintains a format similar to what we've had in the past. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval for board committee members. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Board of Education participates in a wide variety of committees across the state, actually. And I'm just going to read off the names and the responsibilities of what we're looking at. As CABE representative, Technology Advisory Committee representative, and Town Security Task Force representative, nominating myself. For the Middlebrook Strategic Planning Committee, Agri-Science Liaison, and Cooperative Educational Services Liaison, nominating Chris Finkelstein. For the Finance Work Group, nominating Chris Finkelstein and Chris Straub. For Notes from the Board Table, that would be Chris Finkelstein and myself. The Municipal Pension Committee, Other Post-Employment Benefits Committee, that's OPEB, and the Wilton Education Foundation, we're nominating Chris Straub as representative. We're nominating Glenn Hemmerly as representative for the Building Projects Committee, the Miller Driscoll Building Committee, the Miller Driscoll Strategic Planning Committee, and the Wilton Energy Commission. The Area 9 Cable Council has been represented by the Board of Education for a number of years by Ken Bohem. Did I pronounce that properly? Boehm. And we're continuing that recommendation. We're recommending Laura Schwem represent the Board of Ed on the Cider Mill Strategic Planning Committee, the Legal Services Review Team, the Wilton High School Strategic Planning Committee. And we're also recommending Lori Rothstein represent the Board of Ed for the District Strategic Planning Committee and the PTA Council, and to jointly represent the Board of Ed with Laura Schwem on the Wilton Custodians Union negotiations. And I have a motion to accept those committee nominations.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, I'd like a motion to adjourn to our regular meeting. Did I miss anything before we do that, Molly? I don't think I did. Wonderful. So move second? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I now call to order the organizational meeting for the December 5th, sorry, wrong sheet, the regular, the December 5th Board of Education regular meeting. And at some point, Chris, you're going to need to move your seat. You don't have to do it tonight if you don't want to. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda for, what was that? Has everybody had a chance to look at tonight's agenda?
Yeah.
Questions, comments? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As we do at the beginning and the end of every meeting, we have an opportunity for comments from the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the board? Please state your name.
Marissa Lackler.
Thank you.
I'm here to talk to the board about indoor air quality issues. I spoke at the last Board of Ed meeting, and I'm sure you've all seen my emails since then. I don't actually have anything prepared, largely because just before I came to the meeting, I was notified that the reason that I spoke the last meeting was because of my concerns over the radon tests and the fact that they weren't done properly. And I just found out that Wilton is going to retest because protocols weren't followed, which was my concern. So I'm very happy to hear that that is going to be the case. But while radon is a concern of mine, it's not my number one concern in terms of indoor air quality. And I was very upset to learn back in October that Wilton is not in compliance with the indoor air quality laws. The radon tests were supposed to be conducted every 5 years, and it's been 7 years. I don't know why we've lapsed, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the health of my children and the children within all the schools in Wilton. But beyond radon, I think there's some broader issues with indoor air quality. And during my, discovery of these lapses, I found out that we've had, at least at Miller Driscoll, there's been OSHA complaints with teachers. We've had mold reports and studies done, and these are all concerning to me because I haven't seen that we've had, there's no evidence that we've adhered to the indoor air quality laws and established a Tools for School program that's required by law. And I've asked why, and I volunteered to be on the Tools for School committee. And despite, my repetitive putting my name forward to be on that committee, I have not been called upon to help in these matters. And I really would like to help. I've been trying very hard to make the indoor air quality for the teachers and the students better. I would hope that the board would allow the public to know what is going on. I asked Dr. Richards to make this public and to let the community know that there are concerns within the schools, and I would hope that that would be addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Seeing none, we move on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I just have two quick things to talk about this evening. I had coffee this morning with a police commissioner who wanted to talk to me about the town security task force and some findings that they are working on. I wanted to let the board and the community know that conversation happened. There are two recommendations that are, I believe, not finalized, but being considered that would affect potential personnel positions within the district and also affect our budget. So I want folks to know that conversation is ongoing. And then also regards to the superintendent search, we've narrowed the field down to less than a dozen at this time. We'll be doing further evaluations on that number over the coming weeks and look to do initial interviews in early January. Dr. Richards?
Thank you. I have two items for tonight. The first has to do with the radon testing. And as you know, at our November 12th meeting, I reported that we had completed the testing in all of our schools, and at that time I indicated that we had become aware of some protocol lapses that occurred during the testing. We learned that some windows had been opened during a time of the testing period, and we believed that the information that we shared with you on November 12th was accurate. However, following that meeting, Principal Cheryl Jensen investigated this further and learned that the number of rooms with open windows was greater than we had been told. Given these discrepancies, yesterday Ken Post spoke with the supervisor of the radon testing unit at the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and he learned that we had been given some conflicting information about things like parental notification requirements to have the testing conducted while the buildings were occupied. And due to the lapses in the protocol, he was told that the state would not accept the reports that had been submitted. Consequently, this morning, Mr. Post and I spoke to one of the general managers of the testing company, ATC, and he agreed to retest all our schools at no cost to the district. ATC is a highly reputable firm that has been in existence for about 30 years. They have a reputation for integrity, and they assured us that they will do all they can to rectify this situation. And as you know, they've done work for the town when the town commissioned the forensic study at Miller Driscoll. At this point, they have not established dates for the retesting because of the 14-day posting requirement and the upcoming holidays. The retesting will likely occur sometime in January. In the weeks ahead, we'll be working very closely with ATC and with our staff at each school to ensure that all protocols are properly followed. Ensuring the health and safety, I think we all share that concern of our students, is of paramount importance to us, and I want to make it clear that the mistakes that were made surrounding this testing are being addressed. Second item has to do with an event that took place on Tuesday night at the high school. It was a college admissions presentation. The high school counseling department and the College and Career Resource Center held a successful college admissions presentation on Tuesday, December 3rd. Junior students and their parents attended the one-hour presentation by Ann Fleming Brown, who is Director of Admissions at Union College. And through Ms. Fleming Brown's presentation, experience, and expertise, the students and parents gained direct insights into the impending college admissions process. As part of its philosophy of continuous improvement and service, the Wilton High School Counseling Department asked participants to evaluate their experience, and based on according to Mr. O'Donnell, the feedback that they received, the evening was a great success. Some of the comments from some of the participants this was a very informative presentation, brilliant. I liked hearing the frank discussion of the process. The guest speaker was informative and funny. She kept students and parents interested. I don't know how you can be funny about college admissions, but some of you are living through it right now. She kept students and parents interested, and another parent said, I like the visuals, including having students as part of the panel. So I think that was a nice effort on part of the high school. Applaud them for their work. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any remaining committee reports from the previous board's work? Is there any for our new committee? Okay, seeing none, we move on to the educational technology report being presented by Mr. Hepburn.
Good evening. I'd first like to start by welcoming our two new board members. I hope Chris can hear me. Glenn, welcome. I'd like to, for the benefit of the new board members, to introduce the instructional leaders for technology who've shown up tonight in support of technology. Tim Lai, instructional leader at Middlebrook. Amy Korn, instructional leader for technology for the high school. And Jason Greasley, instructional leader for technology for Cider Mill School. More than coming here to support me, a lot of their work shows up in this report. It's, a lot of the reporting comes out from them. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge their efforts as well. And besides being exceptional leaders for technology for the building, they're all great teachers. So any of you who've had them as a teacher are really fortunate to have had that kind of an education. So I'll begin with the tech report. You have the actual report, so you realize that it's kind of broken up into three main sections. The first section is kind of our State of the Union for technology, the where we are. Second piece is kind of outlining our needs, how things are changing. The landscape may have changed since I last spoke with you in the spring. And then the last piece is really what are we planning for? And this is, as you might imagine, kind of queuing us up for the budget season. So you have the report, so I'm not going to go into great detail. I'm going to just kind of highlight some things going on at each school. At Miller Driscoll School, one highlight is because of the favorable budget, we were able to get document cameras in every classroom. And it seems like such a simple piece of technology, but it's really powerful to have that ability to instantly put student work up and have it showing up on the smartphone. You can snap a picture of it. These actual new document cameras, you can actually shoot little video clips on them. So for such a simple piece of technology, great benefits for the classroom teacher, and now we have them in every classroom, so that's another benefit. At Cider Mill, the ability to have smart boards in every classroom and sound fields in every classroom gives that, assured experience for the students. It doesn't matter what teacher you have. But the real highlight for me was the efforts that they made with curriculum and professional development over the course of the summer, thinking about iPad use and the clicker response systems, really upping the capacity of the teachers and building in the curriculum. At Middlebrook, obviously the one that's going to stand out is having the wireless installation there. It was a tough installation season for us. The power was cut off. They didn't have running water, but we got it in August, and the real excitement is to walk through in September and October and to see how naturally the teachers use that wireless. Even the culinary arts teacher will have the kids take out their own devices and take a poll, and she'll have it up on the screen. And it's not like it was forced, it really has become a real natural part of the fabric of what the teachers do. At the high school, the ability to finally kind of almost close the door on smart boards where we get them in every academic area, and again, that kind of ability to have the assured experiences, and the work that Amy's done to work with the departments to get that professional learning kind of department-based, so that you have that consistency with the instruction. In special education, obviously, iPad has been the king for the past couple of years, and it continues to be the king. It's really such a powerful tool. The exciting piece is that preschool donation that the board approved in the spring. We use that to invest in technology and in the training. So not only Dr. Fred really did a terrific job of making sure that not only they invest in the equipment, but they trained up the staff in what they bought. And of course, the highlight, hang on. What we have, budget, PTA, and the Wilton Education Foundation, because none of this really happens without the funding. And the funding for that the WEF really supported really kind of backfilled things that we had to cut out over the past couple of years. The PTAs have been very supportive, so we're real excited that we really felt supported with technology beyond just the budget season. Professional learning is a critical part of what we do. This year it started out at the ISTE conference, which is the world's largest educational technology conference. And the real exciting part of this was that we actually gave back instead of just filling our own buckets with professional learning. You see our entire team, we had all 4 of our instructional leaders there. We had about 100 people come to our booth learning about our first year of iPad development. And it's real exciting that, for someone like Brian Ennis, he had only had iPad Cart for about a month, and he was there talking real authoritatively with people about what you can do with iPads in the K-2 curriculum. Real excited that Amy Korn was the one who really brought this together, so thank you, Amy. And the team, you would have been real proud watching them up there talking with people from around the world. Another real exciting part about professional learning actually hasn't happened yet, but I really wanted to talk to you about it, and that's the iPad iGenius Institute, which is going to happen in a couple of weeks on December 17th. And it's going to be happening right in this room. And we're going to be training the trainers. We're going to kind of create a cadre of expert users of the iPad. And I was fortunate to work with the trainer who is going to be leading this. And we found the real leaders in this region for training teachers in the iPad. They followed this model. I think it's a good model. We can think about this model not only for iPads, but any piece of innovative technology like the smart board or the iPad. It's called the SAMR model, and you actually read it up to bottom. So the S is the basic, the lowest level of understanding, and that's where you just substitute, like maybe you type on the technology or you write on the smart board. You do what you did before, but you do it with technology. A is augmentation. You start using some of those innovative qualities of the technology, and as you see, as you start using more of those, it starts transforming what you do, and then it becomes modified. And suddenly you start seeing things that you can't do without the technology, and that's what leads to the upper end. And if you'll just indulge me for just a moment, I'm going to give you a little bit of an illustration of the model. I have, there are no tricks up my sleeve. This is just an iPad mini. I'm going to kind of show you how that model might look with an iPad. So my iPad screen is going to come up. Just a second. Really is going to come up. There we go. So the S level is where you're just kind of doing the same thing here. So maybe we open up Notes. And we'll just type a little bit. Not very exciting. It's kind of not all that different, although it's a little bit more portable with the iPad mini. But you might notice on the bottom there, there's a little microphone next to the thing. So if I talk into my iPad, it's going to turn my speech into text. And you'll watch. So now it's kind of, wow, that's, you know, a little bit different. Maybe something I can't do with just a straight computer. So maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you want to write. Well, maybe you could use a little bit of digital ink. Or maybe you want to add a picture. Maybe you like puppies. So you want to add a picture, maybe get a little bigger. That's pretty good. You know, now we're kind of getting into, maybe I couldn't do that with pencil and paper. That's okay. So maybe we want to try kicking our notes up just maybe to that next level. Oops. So here are our notes again. And maybe we wanted to make comments on each other's notes. So maybe we talk into it and record our voice. So maybe we talk into it and record our voice. So we're kind of getting into next level stuff here. But maybe that's not quite the end all. Maybe you want your students really to take it to the next level. Maybe you want your students to make a movie to show you their learning. So you ask the students to make a movie where they explain their learning, maybe how to solve an equation. Oops, that should have been a plus, huh? Try it again. So you ask the students to make a movie where they explain their learning, so you get the idea. But maybe, just maybe, there's a level that you haven't even thought of, that maybe the iPad or one of these innovative technologies can do something that you haven't even thought of yet. So everybody see, hello, audience. See my technology report here?
Hi, it's Chip Gall. I'd like to welcome Glenn Hemmerly and Chris Stroop to the Board of Ed. Hope you have many wonderful meetings.
Yeah. Now, did you do that because The Sound of Music is playing live tonight at 8 o'clock?
Actually, I did that because I'm a big fan of John Coltrane, and I was talking with Chip about, I was actually calling out songs for him to play. He's actually quite talented, besides being a terrific teacher. So, as you see, the SAMR model, the technology exists to move through there, and really what's going to allow us to move our teachers through the model is professional learning. We have to make sure that we are providing the professional learning that moves everybody quickly up through that ladder. And that's the point of our professional learning. We're going to see that in the iGenius Institute. We're going to be moving those teachers to think differently about how they use the technology. One exciting piece about what has been happening here in the district is Dr. Smith's arrival and the real invigoration of our data team work. The first data team meeting, we really all met around in this room and discussed updating our processes. And there's really going to be 3 levels of how we use data. And our tool is obviously technology related. It's our RTI Studio tool. There can be instructional teams which really work at the classroom level and investigating teaching and learning in the classroom, even individual teachers teaching. Student data teams is a little bit broader lens. It's the curriculum of the school and how we're meeting the needs as a school within the curriculum. And the district level is going to be how we measure strategic improvement. And you'll see all of that's going to be filtered. We're going to have to really think differently about how we use the technology that we have. Administrative uses of technology is any technology that really is supporting the school system but is not directly linked to students. So think about the work that secretaries, administrators, teachers do when they're not teaching. The real focus here is improving our efficiency and our effectiveness and how we use technology for that. PowerSchool is a good example. This year, Middlebrook joined the high school in offering digital report cards, so parents log in to see report cards. We got away from folding up and stamping and mailing. The next 2 bullet points are really kind of connected together. We needed to upgrade our mass alert system. We chose Power Announcement, which links with PowerSchool's parent portal. To do that, we had to get every parent on board and sign them up. PowerSchool had actually upgraded the tool so that you can log in once with 1 password and see all of your children. Power Announcement's a real upgrade in that parents can manage their own accounts and self-select how they want to be notified for an early dismissal or a snow delay or a snow cancellation. Let's hope we don't have any of those. I want to have a nice long summer. Blackboard Engage is nothing new, although the name sounds new. It's really Edline. The company merged with another company, and now they're called Blackboard Engage. And again, the district has really invested the time at the schools to improve how we use that to communicate with parents and how teachers use that. Infrastructure, obviously wireless is the big story. I already mentioned it, so I'm not going to go over that. But I do want to talk a little bit about virtualization, and really happy to report to the board that we are almost complete with virtualizing all our servers. We have 1 final set, and that's our most important. That's our student information system. That work's going to happen over the holiday break between Christmas and New Year's, and then we'll be talking about how we're going to use having that infrastructure and how that's going to impact the future. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We were able to also upgrade some wiring at the high school. We noticed that we had a little bit of slowness because of the massive volume of students accessing the wireless here. So we're happy to do that in June. We're going to kind of shift gears now a little bit and kind of talk about what's impacting our needs, what our needs are. The major shift, and you've heard this in earlier reports to the board, is the change to the Common Core and how the Common Core is going to be assessed. That's the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. That's what the SBAC stands for. That testing shift and the curriculum shift brought on by the Common Core really is pointing to an age where students need to have a real competency with digital tools. They have to be able to type fluently. They have to be able to manipulate on a computer and demonstrate really high-level thinking while doing that. The Wilton Teacher Evaluation and Support Plan is all digital. We're away from paper reports for evaluating our teachers. The whole system is online. In fact, there's a learning curve even for administrators who now have to go in and type up their observations. And we also need to have that infrastructure to be able to support administrators and teachers doing that. again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. In the report, there's bulleted lists. One comment you might have or might occur to you that there's a kind of a lot of similarity to them. That's really attributable to my instructional leader team and the way they think. They really think as a school system rather than a system of schools, and they try and make sure that the programs that we develop and how we use the technology build upon each other so that when a student leaves one school, they're ready for the next school. And you'll notice a lot of things. The Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium exam obviously is going to be driving the needs at 3 of our schools. In terms of our computer needs, we lease our computers, and so we lease them, we pay off the lease over 3 years, we hold them for 4, and then we replace them in the 5th year. This has really been a system that has worked well for us. We found that computers that for whatever reason that we keep out of warranty fall apart and are really expensive to repair or are unrepairable. And so by really maintaining and making sure that we keep this cycle, we've had a real successful not having to worry about whether that computer lab is going to function, because if we really do a good job of maintaining this cycle. What I would like to note to the board is this area right here and here, and I do have them explained in the stars here. We have really not increased our computer allotment over the years. We've really tried to hold our computer ratio, student to computer ratio, the same. We are actually asking for an increase this year. It is an affordable increase in that we're asking for Chromebooks, mobile carts, which are less expensive than full computers. And the idea here really is to bring the computers into the classroom, take advantage of the wireless at the 2 schools. And we're really meeting a need. We're finding that the labs are being booked in advance, and when things come up and they need the labs for testing, it really impacts learning. We want to make sure that we have the equipment that can support learning. So now we'll just kind of go through our plan. This is sort of a little preview of budget season. This is how we're going to plan to meet the needs that we just outlined. One way, when we think about infrastructure, really trying to maximize our effectiveness and our efficiency. We really want to make sure that our investments are making us operate at an optimal level at providing the network and the resources we need. One change that we're going to have, and we're actually starting this winter, so this is actually something that's going to start this year, we plan to continue next year, is print management. And essentially print management is, instead of buying our ink and toner from 5 different companies and buying our printers from 2 or 3 companies, and we're going to consolidate all that work into one company, and we're going to pay them to manage our printers and supply us with our toners. It does 2 things for us. One, they give us data reports. We find out how much printing we're actually doing. 2, they manage the printers. I mean, they repair them, and that's going to extend the life of the printers, typically 4 to 6 years. So we're actually going to probably double the life of some of our printers. They're not managing every printer, but they're really going to manage about 90%. So really the bulk of our fleet will be managed. It's going to save a significant amount of money for the district in toner and in having to replace all these printers that break. Desktop virtualization. Remember we talked about computer virtualization of our servers. Now we're going to take the next step in our development, and it's called desktop virtualization. What desktop virtualization does is it creates a virtual computer, just like we have these virtual servers, and that virtual computer is going to actually exist right beneath where you're sitting in our server farm. When Dr. Richards or Mr. O'Donnell log in, they're going to see their same desktop that they've always seen. They're going to get a file from their storage. They're going to see the same. But what they're not going to realize is happening is they're actually not working on their computer. That laptop is not going to be working. That laptop is just going to be making an internet connection to the server, and all of the work, Microsoft Word, Excel, whatever program I'm using, is going to actually be running on the server. What this allows you to do is open it up on any device. You could open it up on a tablet. You could open it up on a 10-year-old computer. As long as the computer can make an internet connection in, it's going to get the desktop and run at the same speed. An old computer and a new computer are going to run at the same speed and have the same resources. So what does that mean? Well, we're piloting this year, so we can't tell you exactly what that means. We're going to try this out for 80 stations. If it's successful, what will happen out in the next, as we cycle through the next 5 years, we're not going to have to replace every single computer. We'll only replace a portion, and we can keep our computers longer because they're going to do less. The computer is going to be doing less work. So the kind of nuts and bolts of what you're going to expect to see. Obviously, we are still going to replace our computers as part of our cycle. We're going to be adding those Chromebooks. We're going to continue some successful pilots along the lines that we reported to earlier, the where we are now. We want to make sure that we're able to kind of finish off some rooms, finish off some areas with some of this equipment. Wireless at Cider Mill is our next big priority. We'll want to make sure that we're following our 3-year plan for instructional technology. Cider Mill was next on the list according to our 3-year plan. Another important project that you'll see is the need to replace the original language lab, which is now, it's either 9 or 10 years old. Do you remember?
I don't know, it's old.
It's running on computers that are out of warranty, and now the actual system itself is out of warranty and it's not going to be supported anymore. So we're at a need, when we think about how many students are taking the AP exam for Spanish and how much use both labs get every period, we really need to make sure that we maintain a functional lab for the students. And we'll talk more about that during budget, but we found an affordable way to do this. In support of all of that technology, we need to continue to support professional learning. Obviously, as the Professional Learning Committee makes changes to our teacher evaluation plan, we're going to have to change the technology and the forms and how we use them. As the data team does its work, we're going to have to really increase capacity for RTI Studio. As we have this great iGenius Institute and all these teachers fired up to use the iPad cards, we need to make sure that we're managing them well. We need to make sure that we have the capacity to make sure those iPads are always able to function so that teacher who came up with that really innovative lesson can get out and teach it. And as you might expect, creating virtual desktops while I can talk about it is a complicated thing. We may need to make sure that we support the learning of our high-level technical staff as well. That is really it for my report. I'll come up and field your questions if you have them.
Wonderful, thank you. Both for Glenn and for Chris, at the end of each of our presentations, we have an opportunity for the board to ask pretty much any and all questions of the presenters that they may choose to ask. Any questions to start? Laura, Chris?
Matt, with regard to the print management, which is great, sounds like a great way to save some money, is there any possibility of expanding that out to the town so that we're all printer management is town-wide for further?
It's actually a great suggestion. We are really just starting the process, but I will be happy to go meet with John Severese and make that suggestion. It is really incredible, the comprehensive reports. They can tell you how many prints each computer in which room made, and you can maybe use that to lead into maybe some discussions with alternative uses maybe. The other thing I should mention too is that if you print a large thing, let's say you're printing something like this and you want to make 25 copies of it, you can actually send your prints to the copy room, walk over the copy room. It won't print them. You actually have to type in a code and then it'll print. Those don't get counted. So we actually don't get charged from our print counts if you do that. So part of there's going to be a little educational curve of making sure our staff members know they have that capability for larger jobs and know that it won't count against them, their printer counts.
You mentioned that there'll be people managing these printers. Those are people that we don't have today. How do you account for the cost of those? without making sure our overall printing costs go up?
It's actually built into it's a contract you sign, so you're charged per print. The maintenance and repair of the printers is free. It's included in the...
So you're weighing that against what we're paying now for printers?
Yes, and that was part of their comprehensive study of us. They counted out how many prints we've made. They counted out how much we've spent to replace or repair broken printers, and then they came up with their proposal.
And you anticipate that that'll be less than what we paid last year?
Significantly less.
And they'll have somebody on site all the time, or just as needed?
They said 4 hours from call, typically. Although I'm not going, if you're watching on TV, I will
Oh, so
not
you're
hold
not
you to
a-
that. They said typically 4 hours.
So you call them and they show up?
Yes.
The other point is the desktop virtualization sounds an awful lot like
Yeah.
going back to the mainframe.
It is, exactly.
does.
You know, it's back to the future kind of stuff, like a terminal. Exactly, but it's a much souped up terminal. I think the terminal, you still had to go to the same room attached to that giant computer. Now you could go to Starbucks in Boca Raton and log in on your iPad and get your desktop.
How do we ensure that we're not just cost shifting then from the cost of the desktop to building that new era
The-
mainframe?
The cost is still going to be significantly cheaper, partially because we can reuse some, we've sort of retired some servers, we can reuse some of the equipment we have in the short term, but even the cost of those servers, when you cost it out, in the first years, we don't have to buy any new computers, we can just keep using ones out of warranty. I know it's counterintuitive to what I said, but you won't need to use the hard drive on them anymore. All you'll need is the RAM. You can actually pull the hard drives out of the old computers. So we can invest a lot less money in computer replacement, and that will offset the costs.
Will you be able to show that to us come budget time?
I will do my best. Again, another thing, I mentioned this to Dr. Richards earlier, as we get in the out years, you can actually cost share with other schools. So I've actually been in talks with Weston, who's been doing desktop virtualization for a number of years. That's kind of where I get my information about cost savings. And they said that we can actually share licensing and do an agreement between the two schools.
So does that mean that we could conceivably share this with the town as well then?
We could. We certainly have that opportunity if the town is interested.
You know, you talked about iPads. I know a conversation that came up previously was there was a citizen who wanted to donate their old iPad to your team, and the conversation came around that the donations are welcome, but it would at least need to be an iPad 2 or greater. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So as people get iPad 3s for their families for
iPad
Christmas?
Air, you can't get 3s anymore. You get
Okay, well,
Air.
think about sending those 2s to the schools, please. Other
Master,
questions, comments?
can you talk a little bit about preparations for SBAC, given that they're gonna be administered on the computer?
Sure. Well, one of the first things we did, and if you recall in my spring tech report, we talked about watching the students take the little mini pilot that we were given, and we noticed a lot of frustration over keyboarding. So we purchased take-home licenses of Type to Learn for all students K-5. And you know, originally there was that thought of, well, can the little kids really do it? Are their fingers big enough? But what we're finding is that just having that familiarity of the keyboard, of the layout, by the time they're in second grade, their fingers are big enough, and they are much more technically savvy than we are. And the joy of that game is it's a game. So while they're learning how to touch type, they're actually playing a game, and kids being competitive will go on to try and beat each other in any game. That was one level. Dr. Smith and I have attended a couple of conferences with Abe Christ, who's the head of testing for the state, and we're going to be reporting and working with the principals and administrative teams about some of the learning we had about instructional design to make sure students have that opportunity. One kind of the things we're talking about are giving students the opportunity to think, analyze, and type. So we might be able to use our website or a tool like Edmodo, where it's almost like a closed version of Facebook where teachers make an account and kids can make comments. but give them an opportunity to do some short form typing and thinking, and make some just little slight shifts in our curriculum that are going to give students each week that opportunity to practice using the computer and using those skills. The curriculum's already making that shift. I think we just need to make that shift of incorporating a little bit more technology into it to give them that comfort level.
Will we have enough computers? Or like, will it be administered in shifts or?
Yes, we've the schools have already come up with preliminary estimates of the testing schedule, and they have 3 labs that they're going to use at both Middlebrook and Cider Mill, and the high school, I believe, is using 4 of their labs to do their testing.
Doug, you introduced your team, your instructional leader team, but I don't recall, is there an instructional leader at Middlebrook School?
Yes, unfortunately, his babysitter fell through tonight,
Okay,
so
so
he could not make it.
All right,
His name's Brian Ennis. He's a
Oh,
first
okay.
grade teacher,
Yeah.
outstanding educator, but
Yeah.
he regrettably
Okay.
couldn't make it tonight.
Other questions?
So the K-5 students are doing the type to learn. Are Middlebrook and high school students already up to speed in terms of their typing skills and their critical thinking and typing sometimes?
I would defer to the middle school staff. I think that there's always room for improvement, but I think now that they have the wireless capability and they have a netbook lab there, I think they're starting to try and incorporate the natural, some of those things I talked about, making some instructional shifts where kids are using the technology, but you can certainly
I would say there's a range. We're not at the point where we are at the majority of our students, more at the proficiency level. We actually had parents who recently asked us about the Type to Learn program because of the implementation at Cider Mill. So I think it's something that we're going to have to monitor this year and really consider a plan for the upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something where we decide to push that up to 6th grade.
Any questions? And just one last comment. My 8th grader was looking not so forward to the dissection of a sheep's heart in school, I think today or tomorrow. And through the programming that we have, the teachers sent them home with an opportunity to preview a dissection at home so that they could, I'd say, get some of the willies out of the way and understand what it was all about. And as a parent, it was incredibly powerful for me to watch the lesson happen before the lesson. And it's a tribute to your staff and to the instructional leaders in the science department to pull things like that off.
Thank you. And that's an example of the flipped classroom where you have the kids do some of the stuff that you would normally do in the classroom at home, and then come back and you can use that as the launching pad for the discussion or the activity.
Watching it right before dinner is not a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now, we now move on to the facilities report by Mr. Post.
And for those of you who don't know, Mr. John Murphy, our facility manager.
Mr. Murphy?
I think you all emailed our non-recurring site work and long-term capital bonding plan a couple of days ago. So I'll just walk through it and then you can ask any questions you'd like, and we'll answer them. And the non-recurring site work, the projects proposed for 2014-15 total $475,000. The largest part of that is security measures totaling about $180,000 for 3 of the schools. Any security measures for Miller Driscoll are being incorporated into the building project, and the Wilton Security Task Force has a representative liaison with that building committee. So without getting too specific, the work that we hope to do would be things like adding additional cameras into the buildings that have them already, and then to address some specific recommendations made in the security assessments that were performed by Wilton Police Officer McLean. And these are mostly items that either make it more difficult to access the buildings for those who aren't supposed to be there, and more difficult to see what's going on inside of the buildings. to discourage people who shouldn't be there. It's also possible that the town security task force will be making a recommendation that could alter this plan, so it is subject to change. To go through the work plan for 14-15 by school, at Cider Mill, we have ceiling tile replacement, which has been an ongoing project that we hope to complete in 2 years. And the issue with that is we've had, if you have leaks or tiles get broken, they were non-standard tiles, so you can't replace them. So we've just been going section by section in the building, and when it gets bad enough, just replacing the whole sections. Replacing some playground equipment, and replacing the restroom stall dividers. At Middlebrook, the projects include refinishing the gymnasium floors, completing the renovation of the STEM classrooms, which includes the floor in the middle room that used to be the welding pit in that area, which includes some abatement work and cabinetry. Replacing the gymnasium heaters, and installing another exhaust hood for the family and consumer science room. And at the high school, the projects include refurbishing classrooms, which is an ongoing project, doing miscellaneous work that's needed every year. It could be furniture, it could be millwork, things like that, sometimes floors. Overhead mat storage in the field house. Replacing classroom doors, which again is a multi-year project, and then replacing stair treads. In some of the more used stairwells, the treads are wearing and need to be replaced before they become a safety hazard. So those are the items on the plan for this year for the non-recurring. So this is in the operating budget. So why don't we take questions on that before we move on to the capital bonded plan?
Just quickly before we get started, for Glenn's and Chris's sake, we oftentimes, when it comes to budget cycling, look at the items in here because they are in our operating budget. But if they appear as though they may have a 20-year or better useful life, we may get into conversations with the Board of Finance over the logistics and feasibility of bonding those items.
Capitalizing.
So questions?
I just had a question about the stair treads. I said it's over 2 years. Is that adequate? Like, will all the dangerous ones?
Well, the most egregious ones were taken care of last summer.
Okay.
There were a couple that were in really bad shape, but yes, there's a dramatic difference between how much wear and tear those individual stairwells get,
Okay.
and therefore, they're most ruined. So we're gonna take them the worst as they come.
Okay. Which playground at Cider Mill, or is it both of them?
The south playground.
Okay.
That's the
The
one
whole
that
thing?
coincides with Comstock?
Comstock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the newer one by like a year or two.
No, that's the north side. That's the one up next to the,
Football field?
up by the softball field.
Right.
That's where we put the new equipment
That's
last
the
year.
newer one, okay,
Yeah, the one that didn't get any
okay.
equipment was on the south side, between the school and Comstock.
Okay.
The refinishing of the gym floors in Middlebrook, I know that was a conversation that was brought forth by some basketball parents as well. Do we have any information on how long it's been since we've taken those floors down to wood?
No, and that's, perfect storm. As soon as I brought that up to Ken, then the women basketball people came forward and approached us about the very same issue, but nobody really knows. That's the scary part. So it has been a long time.
Probably time to consider it.
Yeah,
That's why it's on the plan.
Yeah, other questions?
What's the timing for the security task force? I know that was in the news this morning.
The timing for their final findings, do you know that, Ken?
I don't know that. I don't believe any final timeline has been set. The next meeting is in January, and we're going to be discussing some of these projects.
Doesn't the state have a whole list of potentially security mandates that might be coming our way? Everything from bulletproof glass.
There's a conversation. I haven't seen anything.
Again, this breakout I went to at CABE, spent a lot of time on it because there were potentially a lot of financial implications for it. It was just a huge laundry list of things that might be coming down the pipe. All worthwhile. It was like a big giant Christmas list. It was a Santa. Pay for it.
The replacement of
Unfunded
the
mandates.
classroom doors, could that conceivably be considered part of the security efforts as well?
It could, yes.
A good question, Chair, on the security issues, the report that came out a couple weeks ago about the funding that the town
Mhm.
received, is that incorporated in this 180,000 or?
No, and I was
is it
actually
offset,
going to
or-
talk about that a little bit in my financial report.
Okay.
But I can read that now if you'd like.
Well, can you, before you get to that, you had said that these security measures were based on an officer's review and recommendation. Did that include after-hours security as well? Or are his recommendations mostly focused on during school hours?
Her recommendations are mostly during school hours.
Yeah, Lori brings up a good point.
Yeah.
Several of us have been approached in the public and contemplating personally the issues of how secure our facilities are after the last bus leaves.
Yeah,
And-
well, after the staff leaves too.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I think as we discuss security, it might be of value to look at after-hours security measures. You're never going to be able to stop somebody from propping a door open, but,
No. And we've actually had numerous discussions on this security task force about that very issue. And it's not just the school buildings, you have the town buildings too. The
Mhm.
Comstock is open all weekend, Town
Right.
Hall is open. So it's we haven't come up with any answers yet, but there have been a lot of discussions about, what can you reasonably expect to provide as far as security is concerned at those off hours, and what measures would it take and what would the costs be to provide that level of security.
yeah, I think the concern is entrance and off hours, and either hiding out or hiding something that would be used during school hours.
Right.
Okay, any other questions? Wonderful, thank you very much.
But we still have the capital bond plan to go through.
We now move on to capital budget.
As you were going to say.
The only project that is potentially planned for this coming year is to replace the burners on the high school boilers to convert them to gas. And this is dependent on the Yankee Gas project, which I know there's been talk about it being completed sometime next summer or fall, but I don't know if that'll happen or not. So we've got it on the plan for now. If it looks like it's going to happen, we can move it forward. If it doesn't, we would defer it, as we have done other things. In the outer years, depending on if and when the Yankee Gas project is complete, we will have to either replace or remove our underground oil tanks, I believe all of which are at least 20 years old. If we do convert over to gas, we can just have them removed. If we end up staying with oil, we'll have to replace them, most likely with above-ground oil tanks. And the way this works, the capital bonded plan, some of these numbers are good estimates, some of them are rough estimates. As we get closer to actually doing them, we would either go out and get bids or go out and get good cost estimates to refine the numbers before we took them to you and then to the Board of Selectmen. At Middlebrook and Cider Mill, the boilers would also have to be replaced in order to convert over to gas, and they are old already anyway, would need replacement in the near future. Other projects on the 5-year plan at Cider Mill include replacing the carpeting, replacing the front canopy, and then replacing the roof, which is several years away. And with projects like roof replacements, when it gets to be within a couple of years of time to do it, we would usually have a consultant come in and do an analysis of the roof. And it's not unusual for us to end up pushing those projects off a couple of years if the analysis we get shows that there's still life left in it. At Middlebrook, we plan to replace the chillers, repave parking lots, replace carpeting, and then replace part of the roof. I believe that's just the part that wasn't done in this last project. And then at the high school, replacing carpeting and repaving the parking lots. And that's all that's on the plan right now. We actually have a system. It's an internet-based system where we have a lot of data from the school buildings in it, and it actually gives a plan out about 25 or 30 years. So there are a lot more things way out on the horizon, but nothing else that fell within the 5-year plan.
That front canopy at Cider Mill,
Yes.
obviously, it appears pretty rusty. and you can see it, what kind of maintenance can we do to it to try to keep it alive a little bit longer? I mean, is there a way to paint it and patch it?
You could sandblast it.
Yeah, which we have done. Structurally, it's still sound at the moment.
It's the decking.
The decking itself?
Yeah, that on the top.
Yeah.
I think
That's gonna go first.
that would be,
So this replacement isn't replacing the whole structure, it's just the decking?
yes, I would
Okay.
plan on reusing.
Okay.
So in 2015-16, for Cider Mill and for Middlebrook, is either oil tank replacement or replace the boiler and convert to natural gas, is that correct, or is it both? Yeah, if Yankee doesn't come through, then you're not going to replace the boiler and convert to natural gas.
You're gonna replace the boiler.
Okay.
We probably, both of those boilers are old.
All right, so
already.
both of those are for certain, either, then you obviously replace the oil tank, but if you
Yeah.
go to the natural gas, you don't replace the oil tank, correct?
Correct.
So it's
We would-
either or.
We would, if we go to gas, we remove the oil tank though, which is still
Which is
costly.
less than.
Will probably be less than this.
A lot
yes.
less than replacement,
They can
okay.
even be abandoned in place,
Yeah.
but they have to be certified.
Sure,
Yeah.
right, you can do that inside,
Right.
okay. So it's one or the other.
Right.
perhaps. Okay.
And if we stayed with heating oil, we would probably, like the roofs, you know, analyze whether it needs to be replaced imminently or if we can push it off. It's, you have to be careful with boilers. You certainly, something like that, you don't want to have to replace in the middle of winter because then you're out of operation for probably weeks, I would guess.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Any other questions? Nothing else to add? Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, John.
Ken needs to stay here to present the financial
Here
report.
for like the next 4 items.
Dr. Cichetti's not here tonight? Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
I'm looking in the back, actually.
So I'll give you the highlights of the financial report and then take any questions you have. As of the end of October, I'm projecting a budget deficit of $658,378. This is entirely due to special education outplacements. The factors contributing to this deficit are an increase in the number of mediated legal settlements, an increase in the number of students outplaced, and several students placed at private special education schools instead of public education, special education schools. The increase in legal settlements, as I reported last month, is a continuation of the trend we saw last year. Contracted services are currently under budget, but we will continue to monitor this category very closely. I expect that potential savings in other areas and our excess cost grant funding will be enough to cover this overage. We recently filed our initial excess cost grant claim for a little over $775,000. The other potentially volatile category that we always watch very carefully is health benefits. And for the 4 months ended October 31st, health benefit claims are over budget by a little over $51,000. And this figure includes the $515,000 that the board contributed to employees' health savings accounts. The answer to the grant, the security grant fund question is there was some publicity recently that stated that Wilton would receive a grant award for $108,000, and then in parentheses it said $26,000 state funding, $82,000 local match. And I wanted to clarify that what that means is that the board already budgeted and spent $108,000 this past summer on qualifying security projects, and we will receive reimbursement from the state based on the same sliding scale that they use for building projects. So our reimbursement is estimated to be a little over $26,000. The original releases made it sound like we were getting $108,000, but that is not the case. Once we receive this grant funding, we will use it to pay for some additional security enhancements. And I think to answer your question, that may allow us to decrease some of the what we've put in here. Again, some of it may depend on what recommendations come out of the security task force also. So we'll have to watch how that number moves as we go forward. I'll take any questions you have.
Questions?
I guess I have a question more for Ann. Is there a common thread you're seeing? I know that, outplacements are up, and that's a trend that's been happening. Is there a common cause of a reason why students, parents are choosing to outplace, something that maybe we could look to build on internally?
I think the reasons for our increased outplacements, I'll look at the two different ones. The reason why we have some increase is our students with emotional disturbance who either might present a danger to themselves and need a level of supervision that other than public school provides. So that's primarily the reason we have increased some of our initiated outplacements. The parent-initiated outplacements, as I think I've shared with members of the board at a different time, I think is directly influenced by some of the court rulings that have allowed parents to place without trying our program. So we are seeing the backlash from that in some ways. I think the more we can continue to build our programs in schools, as the board has allowed us to do, for children with who have behavioral and emotional and social problems, I think that's still a very important facet for us to build.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. We now move on to deletion of policy 3415, 5143, and discussion of policy 5118. Dr. Kenny,
Good evening, everyone.
welcome. Didn't see you hiding over there.
Thank you. These are fairly simple recommendations regarding our policy work. The first two fall within Ken's area, and part of our work is to look at policies that we currently have and ask the board council if we need to maintain a policy in those areas. We could have practices that we would continue on, but it might not be necessary to have a policy. So the first two fall into that category, on revolving funds and on student insurance. So these are simply a recommendation based on board's legal counsel that we delete these policies from our book.
In my time on the board, I don't recall ever deleting a policy. I'm all for less regulation, but
We have
we?
Yeah.
I don't recall.
Some,
Not often.
not a lot.
Okay. Questions, comments?
So just to clarify, so like the student insurance, that will still it'll still happen?
The
We
practice
still
still
do,
remains.
practice still happens, but.
Practice.
But it's not
Policy
necessary
is
to have a
necessary.
policy.
Is there any objection to putting those two items on the consent agenda for the next meeting?
No.
No.
This is really tough for you, isn't it?
Well, with regard to revolving funds, if we eliminate the policy,
The practice still remains. It's
but why
just,
don't we need a policy for it then?
it's not necessary. The board, for everything we do, we don't need a policy for everything that we do.
Okay.
There are certain things that really link to state statute and legislative changes where
Okay.
we're required to have policies. And in 2 districts ago, I undertook the entire policy book, and part of that exercise was looking at each series and working with legal counsel to say, do we need a policy? If we don't need it, it's good practice to maintain it, or yes, we absolutely do need a policy based on statute. So I think part of the work of the board is to make sure the policy book really reflects those areas that require board policy. It's cumbersome when you're moving through policies like this that really reflect practice and are not required.
So if we eliminate if we eliminate the policy and we continue the practice, we can also stop the practice at some point without.
Yes.
But you could then hypothetically stop a practice without board approval or knowledge. Because the board doesn't manage the practices, we only manage the policies.
But there are many practices that we have in the district right now that don't have policies.
Right.
So
Understood, right.
True,
You know.
but it raises an interesting point. Are these practices that we want to make sure are maintained and not dropped without board knowledge? Am I
Right,
correct?
that's
in-
kind of where I'm getting
Okay.
at is,
But at the same time, the board could say, well, we want to make it a policy again.
That's a good point.
at any
Yeah.
time, true.
I mean, if the board wants to maintain these as policies, I mean, that's certainly your prerogative, there's nothing that prevents you from doing that. But in the process of looking at board policy revision, I would bring the recommendations from our legal counsel to you. You certainly, can choose to maintain these policies if you'd like.
Yeah, I asked, not necessarily as it links to these two policies specifically, but just as a general practice overall, this, of going ahead and just eliminating policies, looking for where policies are needed versus not needed, and again, kind of removing some of the control from the board. That would be my answer.
To Laura's point, we can always put it back in, too.
And we've added policies in the
Yeah.
last couple of years, we've definitely,
Student
Created new
insurance
policies.
has been around since 1958.
Mm.
That was first adopted by a wise board.
And I would suspect that in 1958, we did not have the legislative requirements and statutes that we have now.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Some time.
Any other thoughts, comments? Is there general comfort in moving into the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, you still with us?
Yeah, I am. So do I understand that some of these considerations being deferred to another meeting?
Yeah, the final vote, it'll be moved to a consent agenda, where it's all voted on at one time at the beginning of the meeting. The next policy then is 5118, attendance of non-resident students.
Correct, and what I would ask you to do is refer to the yellow, the regulation. As I wrote in the introductory paragraph, there are no changes to the policies, they're just for your reference. But this is a technical correction. We no longer have extended day kindergarten, so we just removed that language, so it was more general to K to grade 12. And because it's a regulation, it does not require board approval, but I would certainly be willing to respond to any questions that you have.
Questions, comments?
Yep.
Comfortable moving into consent agenda for next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't need.
Oh, it doesn't need it.
It's a regulation, no change to the policy.
We move on then, thank you very much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Kenny. We move on then to action items, and seeing none, we want to point out the future timeline, which again is on the website. Our next meeting is December 19th. It's a budget review and study session. And then January 9th is a budget review and study session as well. Now, as we do at the beginning and end
Well,
of,
I just got
yeah.
one question, quick question on the, any estimate as to how much time you should allow for that, the one on December 19th?
It's about an hour, hour and a half usually.
Hour and a half, okay.
sometimes the first one can be quick,
Is that this one?
sometimes not.
Isn't it? That was one.
And that's here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as we do at the beginning and end of every meeting, there's an opportunity for members of the public to comment. Is there anybody that would like to come forth to speak? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Glenn.
Have a good night.
You too.
Didn't know he was still there at one point, it was so quiet. Thanks so much.